So how do you, as a user, stop phishing attacks? This is a very old browser, but one thing you can do is maybe check the URL of what page you're on. So for example, if I look at this, one question might be, is this real? Well, I could look at the URL up here, and it seems like I am indeed on the pnc.com website. So maybe this is OK. Maybe this isn't like the previous example where we thought we were on paypal.com, but we were actually on that evil website's domain. But here it seems like it is pnc.com. But actually, if I look at the entire URL, which I guess is slightly cut off here, it looks like the entire URL is actually pnc.com/webapp/unsec/homepage.var.cn. So what just happened here is that actually the domain was not pnc.com. Somehow the attacker maybe used some special slash character that's a little bit different from the real one, and they registered a domain that starts with pnc.com and ends in .var.cn. So in other words, we thought the URL was pnc.com. In reality, this entire thing was the URL, and we're actually on this weird var.cn website. So yet again, it's a phishing attack, and just checking the start of the URL didn't help us catch that. So we have to be even more careful. So what about something like this? Well, this seems totally fine. We're on www.apple.com. How could this possibly be a phishing attack if the URL just says apple.com? We're not playing tricks like this where we write an intentionally long URL that starts with something legitimate. But actually, if I look really carefully, if I actually pull out one of these characters, some of these aren't even English characters. There are characters from different alphabets that just look like the English character. So if you wrote this out as a sequence of bytes, the P here might not actually be a P. It might be a Cyrillic character that looks like P. Or maybe that L, maybe it's not an L. Maybe it's a capital I, and you can't tell the difference. Or maybe it's the number 1. And so even if the URL looks OK, there's not a guarantee that it is exactly what you're trying to visit. So fixing phishing attacks or trying to stop them as a user can be tricky. So sometimes we call these attacks homograph attacks. If you've ever studied grammar or something, a homograph is two things that look the same, but they have different meanings. So for example, if I have two words like bear and bear, okay, they mean two different things. One's like a creature, and the other one means to bear something. Well, like bear with me. And so the homograph attack uses the same idea, but with URLs. There's two URLs that look the same, but they actually have two different meanings. For example, apple.com and app1e.com. They look the same, but they're actually different websites that you're visiting. OK, we now know that phishing can be hard to detect because of those homograph attacks. So what if we are even more careful? We take this URL and we check every single byte. We make sure there's no Cyrillic characters or weird slashes. And it seems like it is bankofthewest.com. And we check all the characters. Everything looks good. There's nothing wrong with this address bar. Now are we safe? Yes? No. Why are we not safe? Well, something that might happen. So I checked the URL box. There seems to be this green check. Everything looks good. But what if we weren't actually looking at a real browser? We were looking at a browser that someone drew inside of my real browser. So what happened here is that we've actually visited an attacker website like attacker.com. But what attacker.com does by using JavaScript or CSS is they have drawn an entire replica of my browser. So I thought that I was looking at the real URL bar, but in fact, that's the real URL box. And this is just a fake one that the attacker came up with. And I am actually on attacker.com all along. So this isn't even an iframe. All of this is a simulated browser that the attacker drew. And from our perspective, we can't really tell if this is two separate browsers or if it's a browser that someone drew inside of another browser. So even checking the URL box really carefully could lead you to these so-called browser-in-browser attacks.